Alright guys, Brent Fierstead, personal trainer, nutrition consultant, Dream Achieve Fitness coming back at you. Today we're going to talk about planes of movements and how the human body moves in these different planes. So we're going to talk about the 3 planes of movements today. It's not something you really need to know, but it's going to help you know what muscle groups you're working as far as flexion, extension of the arm, whatever it is. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the sagittal plane. Let's say there's a piece of glass and it splits right down the middle of your body. So it splits you anterior and posteriorly, right down the center of your body all the way through. So the actions have to run basically parallel to your body. So either like a flexion extension of the arm back and forth, or the leg back and forth, or dorsiflexion of the foot, meaning toes going up, or plantar flexion, toes going down, calf raises, soleus, gastrocnemius muscles in that one. So basically the actions of these sagittal plane is flexion extension. Anterior is the front of your body, posterior is the back of your body. So it's cutting right down the middle of your body. Flexion extensions is the main movement of this plane. So like I was saying, as far as ankle flexion extension, you are working your anterior tib when you flex your toes up, which runs in between your fibula and tibula in your shin. So if you're running on an incline running on a treadmill at an incline and your shin starts hurting, most likely it's the anterior tib, or it could be shin splints, but definitely probably your anterior tib is getting sore from running up on that incline. Also, when you're doing extension in your ankle, you are using your soleus, gastrocnemius, which are your calf muscles. I'm not going to get into all the muscle groups, but those are the 2 main muscle groups. To work your gastrocnemius, that's basically just your standing up calf raises. To work your soleus, you got to be sitting down with a bent knee. Those are the 2 different calf muscles in your calf, of course. This is probably going to get boring as hell, but give you guys some info so you can kind of run with it if you want to. Still in the sagittal plane, we're still talking about flexion extension. Now we're talking about flexion extension of the knee. Basically, when you're flexing your knee, you're working your bicep femoris, your sartorius, gracilis, basically your hamstrings. So when you're doing a hamstring curl, you're curling your leg back or your heel towards your butt, you're working your hamstrings there. So if we do an extension of the knee, the patella, basically what you're doing is working your quads. You have 4 of those. That's what's called quadricep, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, and then you're working your glute maximus on this one, which is part of your ass, your big muscle in your ass. Flexion extension still, because we're in sagittal plane, we're talking about the hip now. Flexion in the hip basically is working your part of your quads still, both of your minimus and medius in your glutes, and sartorius and pectineus, so like your hip flexors. Extension of the hip, you're working your gluteus maximus, the one we had talked about earlier with the knee extension. Working the gluteus maximus, which is your butt again, bicep femoris, which is the long head, and then the medius a little bit there too. So more of your hip flexors and whatnot in that one. As far as trunk flexion extension, trunk flexion, you're working your rectus abdominis, which are your vertical muscle fibers running straight up and down in your abs. You're also working your internal obliques, which run like a teepee, anything with a twist to the sides, flexion of the trunk. Working your external obliques that run like a V shape. Same thing, rotating to opposite sides. Extension of the back or the trunk. So if you're extending back on your back extensions, you're working a erector spinae, which connect at the bottom of your neck. run down on both sides. You have 3 muscles on each side actually. Your iliacostalis, longissimus, and the spinalis. 3 of those on each side of your spine. So when you're doing your trunk flexion, that's what you're working there. I know you're bored as hell, but keep listening. Shoulder flexion. Shoulder flexion, you know, like you're flexing your shoulder, anterior delt, front of your shoulder. You're also working your pec major, so your chest. Extension of the shoulder, you're working your latissimus dorsi, which is the side of your back. So like your lat pull downs, you're extending back with, you know, like rows or something. Working that the latissimus dorsi. Also your posterior delt, which is on the back of your shoulder, real small muscle. Now, if you guys are looking to increase like your bench, definitely want to build up your posterior delt, because that's the main muscle that gets the bar back up when you come down. The first muscle that fires to get that bar back up is that rear delt. So that's going to help increase your bench press also. So, you know, work those rear delts, work those rotators to increase not only your shoulder strength, but it's most likely going to increase your bench strength, because your pec major, pec minor do run across and connect to your humerus right by your bicep. So you strengthen up that shoulder, and those rotators is going to, you know, just help you that much more. Keep that ball and socket joint kind of connected there and stronger. Alright, flexion extension of the elbow, so biceps, short head, long head, of course curling, extension, all your triceps. One thing you do want to know as far as working the long head of the triceps, over the top, anything over the top is working the long head of the triceps. Anything with palms facing you is working medial head of your triceps. So those are 2 tips for doing some of your tricep routines there. You bored out of your mind yet? Because I know it's kind of boring. Then wrist flexion extension, just working your flexors and extenders in your forearms. Okay. Now, the second plane of movement is going to be your frontal plane. This plane, let's say the sheet of metal runs through your body this way. So splitting you, anterior and posterior, runs left to right basically, and cuts your body front to back. The actions are abduction, adduction, so hips in and out, upward rotation, downward rotation, elevation, depression, lateral flexion, protraction, retraction, inversion, eversion, radial, ulnar. I'm going to tell you all this craziness. So basically, like I said, running left to right. So anything with your hip in or out, working your, I'm not going to even go into the muscles on this one because there's so many, working your hip flexors both ways. Also working your ankle in and out, working your anterior tibs, your calves, things of that nature. As far as trunk lateral flexion, so either side to side, what you're doing there is working your internal obliques, your rectus abdominis, your erector spinalis, which we already talked about. So basically your abs and your lower back. Elevation, so your shoulder shrugs, working your traps, so your upper traps here, your rhomboids, which run in between your shoulder blades, your scapulas. That's another movement in that plane. And then shoulder depression, working your traps again, your pec minor, and your serratus, which is underneath your chest, so right connected to your ribs there. Let's see here. Retraction. This is a big thing when you guys are doing like your rows or your lat pull downs. You always want to drive your shoulders back and then your elbows. And then when you come forward, shoulders go forward again. Reason why is the main movement of your traps and your rhomboids that are in between your scaps is retraction. So retract back, then pull in. It's just gonna contract that muscle a lot more. So try that in your workouts. Same thing with your lat pull downs. Drive the shoulders down first, then the elbows, If you don't feel it, drive your elbows closer to the sides of your body. There's different ways to do it. It's going to work with different people. Full range of motion, half range of motion. Just switch it up. Switch up your team. I'm not going to get too crazy in depth here, but adduction, abduction of the shoulder. So your medial head of your shoulders, your latissimus dorsi and your pec major, teres major minor, bicep short head, because your short head of your bicep does connect right up at your shoulder. And then as far as abduction, going away from the body, like I was just saying, I already did abduction. Adduction is adding to the body, so that's where you get your like flies for your pecs and things like that. The last one is going to be your transverse plane. So this is the third plane. Transverse plane, it cuts your body superior, inferior, so from top to bottom. Let's say the sheet of metal cuts you right at your waistline. The planes run anterior and posterior again. Actions are internal rotation, external, trunk rotation, cervical rotation, so your neck, protraction, supination, horizontal AD flexion. So anything with the hip rotating, anything with the trunk rotating, anything with the knee rotating, anything with your shoulder rotation. So this is where your like bench presses, where you're adducting into the chest. Okay, working your sternal head, clavicular head, however you set your bar up. Shoulder rotation, always working your rotators to warm up if you're doing an upper body rotation. And then just supination and pronation as far as your hands. So that's basically, in depth, I didn't get too far in depth as far as muscle groups and all that craziness, but those are the three planes of your body and how your body works in the weight room, how your body works mechanically, how it just works, naturally in the human body. So just remember those three planes: sagittal, frontal, and transverse. Use those movements in your workouts, and always trying to, let's say you're doing a certain day, like let's say you're doing upper body day, always trying to do those movements, every plane of movement in every workout every day. Eat right, train right. I'm out. The Life episode 2 will be out sometime this week, July 10th, somewhere around there. Check it out. Check me out, dreamingachieveFitness.com. Let's go. See ya.